And welcome to another episode of Loosely Scripted. I am your host, Bach. Thank you so much for joining me this week here. I've got a friend and guest who comes in from the Counter-Strike scene. I'm speaking of my good buddy, dusT Mouret. dusT, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, dude, it's great. Has been a little bit since we've had a conversation, since we've been to an event together. Obviously, there's none of those going on right now, anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, how's it going, man? It's good. Good to hear
What
from you.
was the last event we did? Was that Atlanta?
I don't even think I was at Atlanta this last time around. It was a DreamHack Open event of some sort, I'm sure, but I just don't remember which one it would have been.
Were you at Anaheim? I don't remember.
Yes.
Okay, so it was Anaheim.
That would've
Okay.
been it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Now I remember because you went Frisbee golfing in Anaheim
Yes.
at a park, and we
Yes.
were going to go, but I was just not feeling it because I felt like
Yeah.
death.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
There
was a
you go.
fun LAN.
So,
That was actually the last public LAN event for Counter-Strike before COVID because there was Katowice not that long after, but there was no audience.
yeah.
So
Yes, that's true.
we got to work the last crowd for Counter-Strike. And it was actually a pretty hype little crowd for DreamHack Open.
Yeah.
Usually our stage at DreamHack Open doesn't get as much love as maybe some of the other stages. Like I know the one year when we were in Atlanta, obviously it's teamed with High Res, so a lot of people are there to see Smite and Paladins. And when we've done some of the other ones, it feels like maybe one of the other stages kind of takes the cake. I think it was actually Atlanta the year before when they had the Halo championships going on right next door, and that was like super hype. But we also, we got to go to Anaheim, so I guess we can't complain where we had a pretty awesome crowd. Genji ends up hoisting the trophy, NA wins, yay, rah, rah, rah. But dusT, I mean, you've had a bit of a tumultuous career as a caster. You've had a lot of ups and downs. You've had some big opportunities come your way, and then you've also had some setbacks and knockbacks. Before we start talking about that stuff, what was it initially, that got you interested in being a part of this industry? Like, where did that kind of spark come from that said, I want to cast Counter-Strike or I want to do analyst work for Counter-Strike?
Well, I think it was just like everyone else. You start out as just a gamer yourself, right? And I think for me, the game that I latched onto that was multiplayer online, where I actually started becoming a part of some kind of online gaming community, would have been the original Halo on PC, Master Chief not Master Chief Collection now, but the Combat Evolved back then. And it was a real shit game on PC. It was a really bad port, but nonetheless, there was still like a pretty small like niche community that was around that game, and so I kind of got introduced to that through people I was actually in middle school with, and through Halo I wound up meeting a lot of different friends online, and a couple of them introduced me into Counter-Strike Source, and probably around, I don't know, like maybe 2006 2007 I think is when I got introduced to Counter-Strike Source.
The
And
superior
again,
Counter-Strike.
yeah. And essentially, what we would do is we would just play it for fun at night. Like we would play Halo all day, and then we would like turn on Counter-Strike Source late at night and play like Surf and Zombie Mod and all that good stuff. And eventually, I got into actually playing the game for real. Doing some dusT deathmatch and different things like that. And then eventually got into competing in like Cal Open and I got all the way up to main, which back then was like semi-pro level because there was no advanced or MDL or anything like that. It was basically open IM main and invite was your pro league. So I got to main level in Counter-Strike Source, and I don't know, I guess at around the same time that I was competing, I also started seeing broadcasts. I think the first broadcast I saw was actually CGS, funnily enough, for all its failures. I think that was like the first time I had actually seen people commentate a video game, and I just thought it was really neat. And then later on, I saw Jimmy Wisenhut and Corey Dunn doing ESEA lands for Counter-Strike 1.6, and I just thought it was cool. I just thought it was really neat, and I was like, man, that looks like a lot of fun. That's something I'd like to try to do. And the way I went about it is I had a friend of mine who his name was Slider at the time he was like a movie editor, and there was this thing called The Vault, which was like this website that had movies for Counter-Strike 1.6, Counter-Strike Source, etc. And I think he had a couple of clips in a frag movie he wanted like commentary for or something like that. And so I kind of just dabbled in commentary that way by just doing like a basically a voiceover for this frag movie situation. And I used that as almost, I wouldn't really call it a demo reel because it was just a couple of like little like small things, but I used it to talk to a company called GameFire, which was a couple of people who used to run TSN. If for those of you who are like, know those people way back in the day, that's where people like Corey Dunn, Van Silly, et cetera, came from. And yeah, I just started doing volunteer work for these different small companies. It started with GameFire, and then later on it was Ponage TV. Then after that it was eRev, and the one that finally got me to like a job was I worked for this company with like Bravo 2 and Holden Silva, who you know.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Esports Collective, originally Source Collective, and then it changed its name to Esports Collective. And then that company got picked up to become the official ESEA TV. And that's how I actually got started really actually casting as a like side hustle, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Was ESEA TV doing 1.6 in Source, like around 2011 or so.
I mean, the funny thing is that's really where I saw like my first main opportunity come in Counter-Strike was through ESEA TV as well, and it was also through Holden. Holden, who I've met at some of the like amateur LAN circuits that go on in the U.S. Love the guy to death. Haven't seen him in ages. But when you started casting, was that like a legitimate aspiration for you when you started, or is it just sort of like, oh, this is kind of fun, like I'm just going to goof off and have a good time? And then did you think like, wow, maybe I'm actually really good at this? Or did you just think, well, I kind of suck at this, but people are willing to listen? Because I know others have said like they didn't really feel like it was a passion or something they were like great at. They just sort of did it and were having fun. And other people were like, hey, I kind of like listening to you. So they just kept doing it.
Yeah, I think for me it was like more of a hobby, especially at like the first like 3 or 4 years I was casting. It was certainly a hobby. I was making zero money,
Mm.
but it was at a time when I was really focused on school anyway. Like I think when I first started doing the commentary for fun, I was like in high school, and then obviously I went into my undergrad years of college, still doing it like kind of on a volunteer basis. Like I said, I didn't earn my first paycheck from casting until 2011, which was basically just a year before I graduated from my undergrad degree. So I was very much focused on school at the time at university, and then I was obviously just working like a lot of different side jobs along the way. Like started, I think in college, my main jobs was as I was actually working at Best Buy at first as a computer salesman and like just selling like other computer related products, but then eventually I was on Geek Squad doing like tech support and all that good stuff. And I was also a resident advisor for the dorms that I lived in on campus. And yeah, so I was really kind of more focused on school and just kind of that traditional path of getting your college education and then, finding a traditional career. And I think that when casting finally became a job for me is I actually went all the way to grad school. So I really was dedicated to kind of the education path. It was something that my mother kind of instilled in me and something that, I just felt was like the right choice. I think a lot of people from my generation kind of thought that was like
Yeah.
the thing to do. And so I kind of just went that route and that was my main focus. And I was like, I'll just, get this grad degree and then start a career. And like right when I got done my master's degree, was right around the time that I started getting more and more gigs. E League was early 2016. I was doing stuff with like the Civo when they had their partner pro leagues with MLG and then eventually Gfinity. And it started be like paying a little bit better and it started being a little bit more consistent. And I think once I got my grad degree, I was like, fuck it. Like, let me take a year or two and just kind of see where this goes. Like, see if I can actually turn this into something that's stable. And so that's basically what happened. And that's kind of been the dangling carrot ever since, really, here in 2020. Even I'm still chasing after that carrot, I guess you
Yeah.
could say.
Now, you went to school. What did you go to school for? What was your graduate's degree in, if you don't mind me asking?
God, so I started out pre-med was like when I first started. So I was actually had pre-acceptance to medical school at my college because of some kind of EAP program that they had, just based on I had like really good grades from high school and had a good ACT score and had a good scholarship, and so I was a very studious person. Studious in the sense I performed well academically. I didn't actually spend a whole lot of time studying. I just, not to like humble brag or something, but I was just one of those people that just was able to, you know, like get by with like, A, B, 3.5 GPA or higher average, like without much effort. And so that was how I started my first year. And then I eventually did computer science for a bit. Didn't really like that. And at the time, history was my minor. And so I changed that to my major, became a like double in history and communication. So that's where my bachelor's degree came, was history and communication, and then my grad degrees in history. So that's what I did,
So
which was done.
when you finally finished graduate, what was your plan? Were you going to become like a history teacher? Did you want to get into the education route?
Yeah, so history professor was actually the route I was going to do. And the goal is I knew I wouldn't be able to teach at a 4-year school because you would need a PhD for that.
Correct.
And but with the master's degree, I thought I might be able to teach like full time at a junior community college. But what winds up happening is that if you're a PhD and you're teaching at a 4-year school, not only are you teaching, but you're also required to like represent your university and your discipline, which means you have to like, publish, you're doing research or publishing like
Mm.
journal articles, or you're writing a book or whatever the case may be. But when PhDs get sick of all that bullshit, they just want to teach and they just want to skate by and instruct and collect their paycheck, which if you have a PhD, you can, collect a pretty high paycheck. As many jokes as you make about like how teaching is really bad pay, which it is, until you hit a certain level. A lot of those PhDs, when they get done with all the research requirements and don't feel like dealing with it anymore, they'll drop down and also teach at junior community college. So it got to a point where I was competing against PhDs with a master's degree for like junior college teaching positions. And so I was just getting fucking smacked, around basically. Like I wasn't really going to get anything. I could have done like part-time stuff, like adjunct professorships and things of that nature, but it was really low pay and it was, very part-time. And I don't know, I think somewhere along the way I kind of just fell out of love with it. Like I think I had this kind of romanticized version of what I thought it would be like to be a professor or something, and then when it became so difficult to actually find a job, and then all at the same time I'm doing this esports stuff that I really love and I feel like I'm truly passionate about, it's kind of just this perfect storm where I kind of just dumped the degree, really. Like, I mean, it sits on my wall, but I don't really do anything with it. I guess you could say it's a resume builder in some ways, but it doesn't really help me where I really want to go. So
It's
it
it's
kind of
an
got lost in the
illustration
mix.
though. It's an
Yeah,
illustration of
sure,
your education and your intelligence level. You can point to it and
sure.
be like, yeah, I know it's not necessarily useful in the field of esports unless you want to be like an esports historian, which I would say to some aspect you are, as you're someone who is very keen to jump into previous statistics and get into that whole realm. But at least you can say like, hey, I'm not an idiot. Like I have a graduate's degree in history. Like I've done my due diligence in school. Whereas like I was made to feel like a moron because I didn't go to college. I didn't even go one day. In fact, I didn't even take my SAT. I knew I wasn't going to college. I was like, I'm not going to waste the money on the test. Kind of wish I took it just so I could see what I would have gotten. I always did well on standardized testing, and I don't think that I'm stupid, but at the same point in time, I'll never know. And now if I went back and took it, I'd get dominated. So instead, to make myself feel smarter, I watch Jeopardy a lot. Seems to work out.
There you
I mean, that's the kind of the intelligence thing.
go. Yeah.
If you had to go back, would you have dropped out?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I wouldn't have dropped out of college entirely, but I think what I would have done is I wouldn't have gone to grad school
Mm,
because that just brought on a mass load of student debt
debt,
that I
yeah.
really feel like, which with student debt is fine as long as it's a worthwhile investment, so people who go to medical school or what have you. Like, yeah,
Or
they're going to
law
take on a lot
school.
of
Yeah.
student debt, but they're going to have a high paying job at the end of the day
Yeah.
that has pretty good security unless you like really mess up and you get fucked on malpractice or something like that. So there's certain times when taking on a lot of student debt is going to pay off in the long run. Whereas in liberal arts, it really doesn't. You know, like you have to have a passion for that. Like you have to kind of really want to do the research and do the publishing on the side and take on like guest lectures and like you have to hustle basically if you want to really make it worth it. And you have to actually be able to find a full-time position, which is quite difficult because basically people never stop doing it. Like you'll
Yeah.
have freaking 90-year-old people still being
Mm-hmm.
full-time professors. So it's very, very tough. So if I could do it over again, I would definitely still go to college and get my bachelor's degree. There's no question about that. But I think I would have focused more on like communications and like PR and media and things of that nature, things that I think would serve me well in the esports industry a lot better than history. At least I have the comm minor, so I have some experience I can point to on my resume that says, hey, I have an education in the field of communications and things of that nature. But I think I would have focused a bit more on things like PR and marketing and other things like that and still gotten a bachelor's degree at the very least. And because I got my bachelor's degree for free off of like academic scholarships. So I would have been sitting pretty if I just would have, got that and moved on. But I think it was like a weird time when I got my bachelor's degree where esports still really, at least for me, wasn't at a place where I could feel comfortable pursuing it. And I didn't really know what to do. I was kind of lost on like what I actually wanted to pursue as a career path because I had already changed my major basically twice in undergrad.
What you're
So
saying, though, is a common problem for people from our generation. Like, I'm a few years older than you, but ultimately, like, we're in the same area in life. When we were in high school, it was basically college prep. It wasn't life prep. They don't
right.
teach you life skills. They don't teach you how to adjust to a real life. They teach you how to get ready for college. And they still do that to this day. And for me, it's one of the biggest gripes with the American education system is there's no thought process to like, hey, not everyone goes to college. Like there's no degree to become a mechanic. Like you just become a mechanic and there's nothing wrong with that career. Like I know a guy who started as a mechanic and then opened up a chain of gas stations and like service stations. And he's got like one of the biggest homes on a barrier island in New Jersey that sits right on the bay. It's beautiful, gorgeous home. And that's what he did. Like, there's a company who does landscaping. The guy did not go to college. He barely graduated high school. He went back, when I think my mom was in high school, and he was kind of like a slacker. But he figured out he really liked landscaping, built a big company out of it. It's one of the biggest landscaping companies in our area now. And he has a huge home, like massive, like mansion. It's palatial. There's nothing wrong with not going to college, but when we were in high school, and they still do it today, they jam it down your throat that's the path. You go to college after you finish high school. And then what ends up happening is you have all these kids who are confused. They're 19 and 20 years old, and they don't even know what they want to do. They just knew they had to go to college. So they get to college and they go, well, what now? Like, I changed my major 3 times. I've changed schools 3 or 4 times. I'm in school now for a 4-year degree in my 7th year. My debt is crippling. And then you get into the workforce and the jobs aren't there that you thought were going to be there, that they told you all along you'd be able to get because you had that degree. And you're just like struggling to try to pay off the debt that you accumulated while you were in school. I actually look at it and I get really frustrated because I feel like it's very predatory. You're kind of taking advantage of young kids and just building up this crushing debt, and not everyone knows. And you don't realize, like, we're lucky. We don't need a degree in our field. Like, working in esports is just kind of like, you could use one, but, like, the caster doesn't need it.
I think having, like, some type of business acumen or some type of marketing acumen,
100%.
those types of educations can definitely serve you well in esports. And, look, I think college is great for people who, like, have a very focused mindset on what they want out of it. So I think obviously allied health, the medical field, that's a worthwhile endeavor to go to college for. Same could be said for like engineering or computer science, or there's definitely certain areas where, it's well worth it if it's actually something that you enjoy, you're passionate about, or that you can see yourself doing as a career. Liberal arts to me seem more like life experiences and like the extra things that you gain from the college experience outside of the classroom. like just growing up and maturing as a person and dealing with conflict and dealing with things you didn't have to deal with before when you lived at home with your parents. And I think you do a lot of growing up, and then so you learn a lot of life skills and social
Yes.
skills, and so I think there's a lot of intangibles that come with the college experience that I'm glad I had. I think it did grow me as a human being, and made me a lot more just open-minded and just more well-rounded, generally speaking. So that's why I say, like, the bachelor's degree, I wouldn't really change that at all. I just think that going to
Yeah.
grad school, for the cost and for what I've done with the degree after the fact, I think, if I could backpedal a bit, I would probably take those 3 years back and use them to focus on something else. But you live and you learn, and you do what you can.
Now, you mentioned that you romanticized that career path maybe a little bit, and you thought that it was going to be something that it wasn't. Do you ever fear that if you were able to crack into like the top tier of working in Counter-Strike or working in any esport in general, just being able to make this your career, do you worry that that could be the same thing? Because the reality is a lot of jobs, people take them thinking like, oh, it's going to be great. I'm going to love it. Like my buddy Matt, he was a mechanic. He loved working on cars. And then he became a mechanic. And then in a few years, he didn't love working on cars anymore. He was like the top level technician for a Honda dealership. Now he's installing granite because he just couldn't do it anymore. Do you worry that like maybe you could get to the top and it's like one of those grass is always greener on the other side scenarios?
I don't know. I think I've done this long enough and pursued it long enough, and still have all these goals and ambitions within the industry that I can't see that happening, because I really do truly feel like this is my passion. And so I can't really see me. I mean, obviously, when you have to deal with like some of the politics and some of the negotiation stuff and some of the behind the scenes shit that people don't really know about, some of those things can get very stressful and tiring. But when it comes to actually getting in the booth, putting the headset on, and like doing the job, and even like the research and stuff leading up to it, and just being a part of the community, engaging in conversation, I feel like I've been at it enough, as a hobby for several years, and then as some type of part-time job, I guess you could say, for the last, particularly the last 4 years, like, from 2016 onwards, kind of when I made it an actual true, I guess, side gig of sorts. I think I've put enough investment into it time-wise to realize that this is definitely what I would love to do, if possible, right? I mean, you always got to think about job security, stability. Am I going to be able to actually financially pull this off? All those things swirl, especially in a freelancer market, just like any other freelancer market. But I think that the passion and the drive is still there. I still have, I feel like, unfinished business when it comes to like goals I want to accomplish. I think that there's still a lot there that I want to do, and so at this point, I would say, like, no, I don't fear that.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I can kind of personally relate with, is this idea of unfinished business. Like you have these things that you always want to achieve. Like you want to work on a major. Like I think that's the ultimate goal of anyone that works in Counter
I just
Strike
want to work a
broadcast.
tier 1 event. Just give me one of those.
Well,
Like, you know what I
so
mean?
I mean, let's flash back to what could have potentially been a tier 1 event where it ended up falling into this complete disarray. I by Power Masters. We both got on that broadcast and we were like hell yeah, like Astralis is here, Liquid is here. Like this is a stacked roster lineup. It's going to be an awesome event, live audience. We're in the audience, facing the audience, and then we get there and we're like, huh. Well, that's a little bit weird, and that's weird, and this is weird, and that's weird, and then it all just like snowballed downhill. I know you've worked some pretty bad events. You were at ClutchCon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, ClutchCon's definitely still number 1 on the list of worst events, but I by Power Masters event, certainly top 5.
Yeah, I would say it's pretty close.
There.
Yeah, because
it could be number 2.
Yeah.
After ClutchCon for sure.
What makes it better is the team list. I think the team list drops it down a few pegs just because it's like, okay, yes, the event
we still
itself
got to enjoy a good Counter-Strike.
Bingo. That finals was still really good between Liquid and Astralis, although it almost didn't happen because Astralis was like, we're going to leave if you don't fix this problem. Yeah. And then on top of that, like it ran over schedule, so it almost didn't happen for a different reason because the club was set to transition. Oh, man. I mean... I've actually
there was
to people
so much
about
going on behind the scenes on that. The gun threat.
Oh god.
Nothing like walking out to the casting booth wondering if someone actually does indeed have a handgun in the crowd and is willing to use it after their tweet. And that's definitely one of the scarier moments that's definitely happened at an event. So yeah, like that was it. And there's been a couple of other like near chances I had at tier 1 events. Like I played a small part in E-League season 1, which was obviously a really big event and really landmark kind of esports thing. Unfortunately, it didn't pan out the way I thought it would, but it was still a good opportunity. The small part I did get to play in it. And I've worked on so many fucking like regular seasons for like EPL, but didn't get to go to the finals, or
Yeah.
work on qualifiers to an event I didn't get to go to the LAN event for, or I've done like B stream stuff remotely for tier 1 events. So I've been very, very close, and I've played small roles, but the goal has always been to just finally get to one and like actually play it all the way out. And really get to say that I was a part of a tier 1 event all the way through. That's like goal number 1 that it's on the list that I still haven't checked off yet. And then a major obviously is everyone's ambition, but if I'm being realistic, I need to get like to a tier 1 event first and get consistent kind of at that level, and then maybe a major comes into play. Obviously there's always a chance I get a major just based on like availability and whatever, if they decide to expand the talent pool or something like that for like some kind of super major where that they celebrate Counter-Strike by kind of trying to include everyone. But yeah, like the point is kind of this essential theme of these goals I still want to hit. And there's always that thought of like, is it the sunk cost fallacy? Like, am I chasing after a dangling carrot? Like, should I, just kind of, just say, okay, like, I tried and move on, or do you keep chasing after it? Like there's always those internal debates that take place. So it's a toughie.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough conversation because there's been times throughout my career where I've been like, you know what, I think it's time that I just stop.
Yep.
I'm getting lapped by people that I started with.
Yep.
Like I look at people that I've casted with over the years, the early level of their career. I casted with Sadakist early on. I casted with Moses early on. I casted with Blue early on, who has since gone on to Rainbow Six Siege. I've casted with Scrawny early on, Hugo and Harry early on. Like these guys are all now making a big name for themselves. I think the truth is, though, it's not that we're bad at our jobs. I don't think that's the case. I just think that you have to wait for that opportunity. It's kind of like trying to make it in the recording industry. Like the right person has to hear your tape. And when the right person hears it, everyone hears it. And then once everyone hears it, they go, wow, this person's really good. Right now, we're like waiting on that exposure opportunity. I was literally talking about this like 20 minutes ago, right before we got started, saying how in Counter-Strike, it became a problem for a while where it was just talent regurgitation, just continuing to cycle the same talent in and out. One of the best things that happened was event overlap. As much as it sucked for the players and it sucked for TOs, all the events colliding meant that talent couldn't be at both events. So there was more opportunities. And that's when you saw guys like Scrawny and Launders get more opportunities. And you saw Hugo and Harry get more opportunities. And I'm happy for them. I would love to see that happen for more people as well, because I've been looking at it for the Valorant scene, and I worry that the same thing's happening there because, again, it's just top talent after top talent after top talent announcement. There's aspiring people who want to latch onto your game and make it like a part of who they are. I think a classic example is Intero and Kickstar, who are two of the best casters for Rainbow Six Siege. I met at Intero at DreamHack Austin, the first event I ever hosted for DreamHack. And Intero actually wanted to meet me, came up to me, said I gave him some advice in an ESEA pug. I didn't really remember doing it, to be perfectly honest. I remembered his name because I knew we followed each other on social media, and I knew that he was a Rainbow Six caster who was on the rise. Well, he latched on to Rainbow Six in the early days and built himself with the game. And as such, he has a tremendous amount of loyalty towards that game and that brand. Whereas when you go the other direction, like, say, OWL or even CS has gone at times, you just try to bring in the top people. Eventually, there's going to be a new opportunity. It's going to pull them away. There's a lack of loyalty there because to them it was just a job. Whereas Intero or like maybe Scrawny or Hugo or Harry feels like this game changed their life. This scene helped to change their life for the better. So I mean, I can relate to that. I feel like there is a very real sense of like, oh man, like if I just get that opportunity, If I just get put in front of the right audience, I can prove what I can do. And I think
Yep.
you've done that at times. You've been given those chances, but you need a few of them. It's not just one. One event is never going to be enough. It has to be a
Well,
few.
I mean, I think that like there's really two different sides to this to me. There's like dusT the analyst and dusT the commentator. And on the dusT the analyst side, I think I'm more than proved that I'm capable of being a really good desk analyst when it comes
I
to
agree.
being like really knowledgeable and coming in very well researched and being able to bring insights, whether that be statistically or tactically or historical stuff or the Matt pick band stuff, whatever the case may be. I think I've always came in really well prepared and really knowledgeable and like I said, really able to kind of share with the audience what I thought was really insightful information that prepared them for the game they were about to watch or explain what they just saw and kind of add that detail and add that nuance and bring storylines in. And I think I more than proved myself capable in that role. I think the two problems I run into is I think I focus a little bit too much on the being the brain and I let slide the other aspect where I needed to also be an entertainer. I also needed to be able to loosen up, have a bit of fun, crack some jokes, like be able to bounce better with my co-analyst and have like more fun with it, which is something I've recently really focused on. And I think that if I got another chance at a desk again, I think I would be a little bit more well-rounded when it came to being insightful, but also being able to have fun and loosen up and all that. I think that's just the lesson I learned a little bit too late. And then the second problem is obviously I'm not a former professional player. So no matter how
Yeah.
hard I try, I'm never going to have the same credibility as a former pro. I'm never going to have the same brand size or the same community popularity or the same social media following. And I'm also never going to have those same in-game experiences that they have that is going to be that extra bit of insight that I don't have. I might be able to beat them in some other areas just because I do a fuck ton of research and maybe some of them don't do as much. I'm not saying they do or don't. I have no idea what they do behind the scenes, but there might be some areas I'm more knowledgeable than them in, but there's some areas that they have experience in that I'll never have. And so therefore they're going to edge me out in that regard. So dusT as an analyst is very much on the back burner. Like, I mean, obviously I'll still take opportunities. I would still love to do it. I still enjoy it, but it just seems like over time we've seen more and more former professional players take breaks or retire and come into the analyst space, and it's made it very difficult to get analyst gigs for that reason. And then on the dusT the caster side, Vince and I have never gotten a fair shake. We never have. And I know that Vince and I could be a powerful duo if we were given the same runway that some of the other duos have been given. And that's no knock to the other duos. I think they're fantastic. I think Hieri and Hugo are smashing it right now. I think Scrawny and Launders are gonna smash it once they get more consistent. I know that COVID has kind of kicked everyone's consistency a bit.
Yeah.
But Vince and I have never gotten a fair shake to actually get some runway. I think we already have shown that we can do really good work. I think we're only going to get better with more opportunities as we work on our chemistry and banter and back and forth more. I think it's already very apparent that Vince is a super strong play-by-play commentator. I think it's already very apparent that I'm a very knowledgeable analytical type guy. I think those two things mesh well. I think it's just about finding a balance between the play-by-play, the insight, and the entertainment factor of like bantering back and forth and having a good time and loosening up. I think that's something that we've already really worked a lot on when we did Rotterdam last year and some of the online work we've done here in 2020. But if some company would just take a chance on us to give us a few LAN events in a row, or if it's one tier one event would give us a chance to expose us to a larger audience, I really feel like we could be just as strong as any other duo in the game. And that's not me being cocky or belittling the other talent, because I think the constant message from everyone has always been that Counter-Strike's flooded with talent. And I think for a long time, I suffered from having low self-esteem and low confidence. And so now I can finally have that confidence to say that I know I can do a good job. And I know that Vince and I together as an item can be a great duo. And, I'm just waiting to see if we ever actually get that chance to show people what we're capable of.
I feel like you are definitely better on the desk than maybe you think. I know that one of the issues with being on a desk in general is you might come into a desk segment and you have 10 things you want to say, but there's only enough time for 8 things to be said. And it's not like you can say all 8 things because you need to share that time equally with whoever else is on the desk with you. So I thought that's one thing I know that when we've worked on desks together, I've tried to like have some fun with you. Like when we were in Rio, I thought we had a great desk dynamic between me, you, and Christine, because
Sure.
we would kind of like, hey, let's loosen dust up by like cracking a few jokes, and it definitely seemed
Yeah.
to work. And we got really loose on the desk, and we just had fun. And
Mhm.
that is so important. That entertainment aspect is really important because as
Oh yeah,
much
for
as
sure.
it's great to talk about stats and it's great to know like
Mhm.
team defaults and who's going to be playing what positions, like that's all very vital and important information. But ultimately, it is an entertainment job at the end of the day, and I
Yeah.
think we all lose ourselves in that. I think
Yeah,
we all
I
lose.
think I learned that a little bit too late. Like I think that I focused too much on being the brain, which I think was good to build a foundation because I know I had to work from behind, right? Like I wasn't a former pro. I wasn't going to have the credibility of being knowledgeable. I had to
Yeah,
prove I knew what I was talking about. And I think that I did do that in 2016 with like E-League and some of the other gigs I was working at the time. And so once I built that foundation, I think I should have much sooner started focusing in on some of the other areas, like maintain that foundation of knowledge, but you know, loosen up and also have fun. And I think maybe somewhere along the way you kind of lose sight of why you got into this in the first place, which is because you love it, you're passionate about it, it's super fun to do. Uh, I think maybe I take myself a little bit too seriously sometimes, in a way, I guess you could say. So I think that I think I just it took a little too long for me to realize that I needed to like have more fun with it, and I'm starting to try to do that now, like last year and this year. And I think you're right. I think that it was at a point where when you knew me on the desk, I felt like I had this chip on my shoulder where I had to prove I knew what I was talking about and prove that I belonged. Uh, and there was also just kind of, yeah, like you have all these things that you want to share, and it either turns into you regurgitating all those things rapidly, fast, or no one can understand what the fuck you're saying, or you wind up running over other people, and that's not good either. So yeah, I think that if I approach the desk again today, I think I would be much better prepared for it, and could do a much better job. And like I said, on the casting front, if a company would just take a chance on Vince and I think we could do big things as a partnership on the casting front. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that.
if you had to pick one, like if you had to pick between being an analyst or a caster, which one would you prefer?
I guess that's question a lot, and I think that for me, I think you have a little bit more freedom as a caster, to have fun, to banter, to entertain, to have those moments that people remember, to you know, be a bigger part of the game. And I think that because I enjoy strategy and tactics so much, there's not a lot of room for that on the desk. Like the desk is more about the entertainment side, bantering back and forth, having a good time. But then, it's introducing the teams, map pick ban, maybe some stats about
It's very
players.
rigid.
Yeah, it's very rigid, and it's also very short. Like you do not have a lot of time on the desk at most tournaments. At most tournaments, a pregame segment is going to be anywhere from like 8 to 10 minutes or something like that. And you're splitting time between three different people. So if you average it out, maybe each person gets like 3 minutes of mic time to try to give their case or whatever the case might be.
And
And so I think that
in
it's
that three
just
minutes too, you're also doing everything that's already pre-built. So like there's
yep,
there's things you might want to talk about that you can't because you have to
yep,
talk about something else that's a part of the show.
yep. Yep, I think desk work can get really stale in that regard because obviously some companies have changed up a bit by bringing in the telestrator or building special segments, but there's not a whole lot of that. There's only like really a few companies who have done that, and even some of the companies who haven't done so consistently and have backtracked onto old ways. And so I think for me. I know that I'm probably a stronger analyst than caster like today, this moment, but I think that given enough reps and given enough runway, I think my color commentary could be just as good as my analyst work. And I think that it's also easier to transition the commentary into other things, like whether that be another game or whether that be like side content, whatever the case may be. I just think it makes you a little bit more versatile. Like I think in a perfect world, I just do both, right? Like I think I would duo with Vince as much as possible, and then if a desk gig pops up here or there, then that'd be great. I think that that's like kind of the perfect scenario. So I think if I had to pick and choose, it's pretty 50-50 to me. But I don't know. I definitely would love to get to duo with Vince more and kind of show the world what we're capable of. I think that part of me right now that's like really like still a chip on my shoulder. I think that I want to prove what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's also done all the roles, like being an analyst, being a caster, and being a host, as well as doing production work and camera ops and all the other background stuff as well, replay technician, observer, I, I feel like I actually do way better as a host. And it's kind of like, even if people tell you that you're really good at something, it should ultimately be what you feel comfortable with, because
Mm-hmm.
it's your personal experience. So it's not even
Mm-hmm.
that. It's also, what do I like the most? Like,
Yeah.
it's not just what do I feel best at. Like, I might really suck at woodworking, but it's not going to stop me from trying to build a table if I really want to do it, because I like to do it. And in fact, I did just recently build a table, and I do suck at woodworking, but it came out passable enough that we'll be able to make use of it. But
Yeah.
the idea is, like, you can't just fall into comfortability. You have to be able to, kind of stretch yourself if it's something that you really are passionate about. So
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those internal questions you have to ask yourself: which one do I want to do more? It shouldn't just
Yeah.
be which one am I best at, because ultimately, like, yes, it's important that what you're doing you're good at. You don't want to do something that you're really bad at, especially if it's a profession. But
Right.
you want to have fun and you want to enjoy yourself. You want to really explore your passion. And even if you suck at it, like, who cares? Like, some people suck at surfing. It doesn't stop them from going out into the water. I
Yeah.
sucked at skating for years. I still stepped on a board and continued to push around despite losing an organ to it. Like, that is the nature of passion. You do what seems illogical because it's what you love.
Yeah. And I think that for me, like the color commentary and desk analyst roles are so
They
similar
are.
that it's pretty easy to bounce back and forth between them. I think the only real difference is the time constraints and maybe how you format what you say. And you obviously do focus on different topics. Like when you're on the desk, again, you're focusing more on like introductory and historical type content, whereas in game you're focusing more on the game itself as well as strategy and tactics a lot more. And since I enjoy strategy the most, I think that that's probably why I lean more towards casting. But I enjoy the desk work too, and I think it comes to a point where you just have to, especially in my case, when you're not like some type of established like tier one talent, and you don't really get to pick and choose so much. Like you kind of have to be flexible and versatile in order to maximize the amount of opportunities that you're available for and that people will pitch to you. So I think that I'm in this place where I kind of have to just be open to both. Um, but yeah, I think it just kind of depends on what happens next. Like which a lot of it's out of your control. Like a lot of the time you feel helpless whenever you're not one of the big names, where you kind of feel like your future is very gray. And you're just, yeah, there's always the uncertainty. COVID multiplied that even more. And yeah, I don't know, it's tough. Like it's been like you said at the very beginning of the show, it's been a very up and down road for me. And it's always hard when you're in the lower parts of those to know if it's ever going to come back up or not. It's definitely a very mentally taxing kind of thing, and it's definitely been a draining few years for that reason, because I've definitely, like you said, had a lot of ups and downs. So yeah, not really sure where I am or where I'm headed at this point, but I know it's still something I'm passionate about and something I still want to pursue and something that I still feel that I can do well and feel that I can continue to get better at. So we'll just have to see what happens. It's kind of been my mentality.
Looking at your career, you've obviously, like you said, you've hit some stumbling blocks, you've had some hiccups, you've had hurdles you've had to overcome. More recently, you've at least tried to re-enter the job force. I know we spoke about it the last time we saw each other. What happened with that? Because COVID kind of popped up like right around the same time that you were trying to do that, because you were realizing, like, okay, I need to be able to kind of like pay my bills while also exploring this passion. You're like on the fringe of being able to do it full time and having to have it be a side hustle. Where are you at with that right now?
Um, are you talking about like the EMT stuff?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, along all the way, I've been doing like online EMT course. Well, it's kind of hybrid. Like, I did a lot of the bookwork and quizzes and stuff like that, lectures, all that online. But then I also out to New Orleans every so often to do like actual like hands-on skills training. So I'm pretty much 100% done with that as far as the actual course itself. Like I passed the final exam and like did all that. The only thing I have left to do is like the clinical rotation requirements, where I actually like ride along on an ambulance like for 4 or 5 like 12-hour shifts and actually like make patient contacts and like write up like patient reports and stuff like that. Just classical clinical rotation stuff that anyone in the medical field has to do as part of their way to graduate and get their license. And so all I need to do is do those clinical rotations and then take my license exam, and then I'm done and I can and be a part-time EMT. The problem is COVID actually froze us from doing clinical rotations. A lot of states didn't, and programs didn't want to put students out there during the COVID situation. And so I'm kind of just waiting for those restrictions to get lifted so that I can go do my clinicals and finish that off and get my license and have that as a like stable kind of part-time job that I can do, that has very flexible hours, that still will give me opportunities to work in esports as much as I already am, if not more. So yeah, there's definitely that I'm still working on. And there's always the look at, is there like some type of job behind the scenes that would give me more stability? I'm always on the lookout for something that'd be like an interesting opportunity. Like for example, I think it'd be really cool to go work with like Scoots at Do Not Peak Entertainment and like do content and do cool stuff like that. That would obviously be something that would interest me maybe. So yeah, it's kind of a whirlwind and all that, but hopefully I'll get the EMT stuff sorted, have that as a part-time job, and still pursue like casting and desk work and stuff as much as possible. Obviously Valorant's out, that's a game I'm interested in as well, but I think everybody and their fucking mother's interested in that game. So good luck trying to find a way into that. Like, I've definitely tried to put feelers out there, but it's one of those things where you put feelers out and a lot of the people, want to hold on to the piece of pie that they have and not let you have any of it. And so they usually ignore you when you try to reach out.
Well, if you need
It's
help
the
with that,
same.
you let me know, because I've been working a little bit in Valorant and I've been able to get a couple of gigs here and there. So I have no
Yeah, I
problem
had
helping
one
out.
gig that I was going to do with Vince that was with like an actual team org that was going to do like a inner org tournament, and then they were going to do like an org versus org tournament. I don't want to get any more specific than that, but it just like kind of randomly fell through. So definitely like Vince and I as a duo kind of realized that there's limited spots in Counter-Strike for us, but we have a skill set that would be great for Valorant. And I think any Counter-Strike caster has a great skill set for Valorant, frankly.
Agreed.
So yeah, would love to dabble in that a little bit and see if there's something there or not. I don't ever want to give up entirely on Counter-Strike, but at the same time, I have to, again, same thing as earlier, be flexible, be able to roll with the punches. If I really want to make a, career, or at least have a little bit more stability in being a broadcaster, then I have to be flexible. And for a while, it was just trying to find a game that I enjoyed enough to want to pursue. I don't want to just jump into a game just to cast just because I feel like I need to cast more and make more money casting. Like, no, I want it to be something that I truly love, just like I truly love Counter-Strike. And there was one game, Battalion, but that bitch is dead.
Yeah.
Big dead. That was like the first time that I really had a game that I enjoyed that I thought I could pursue alongside Counter-Strike, but that's gone. But Valorant has definitely grabbed my attention as something that I actually enjoy a lot. There's obviously some quirks about it that irk me, but overall, I see the potential, and I think the foundation's great. So definitely something that Vince and I look into as well as a casting duo, and something I'd look at individually as well on an analytical side. It's just I know that all the top talent are gunning for that, and so it's going to be I hate to say it's going to be like a bloodbath, but once it starts condensing down into like more finite, like big organization tournaments, or if it turns to like an LCS type system down the line, it's definitely going to be a battle royale on like who actually winds up being able to get casting gigs in that game. So that's going to be an interesting one.
I mean, here's the thing too. Like right now, it's a lot of the top talent that are getting these opportunities. There's an opportunity coming along that they could get pulled away from that from. for. Like, like we saw a lot of the people that are currently casting at a high level in Valorant casting OWL, and then
Hmm.
they left OWL because other opportunities came along. That's the nature of the beast when you're that high up on the food chain. Like you're gonna go to the next big thing, and this is not a jab against top talent whatsoever, but that's when it's important to have a system for the amateur guys, the low level guys, to come in and take those gigs. It's not to say that the amateur guys are bad. A lot of times they're just as good, sometimes not even better than some of
Right.
the tier 1 talent. In fact, I've watched a couple of the tier 1 Valorant events, and I know where I sit in like casting wise in CS:GO. I think I'm better at Valorant than I ever was at CS:GO. So I'm listening to some of these guys. I'm like, I could do a better job than this. I
Yeah.
know that
I
I could
think
do
I
a better
think
job than this.
yeah.
And I get
Same.
frustrated too because it's like, not only do I know Valorant better than this person who's getting paid 5 times what I would charge, I also know all of the players better. Because if
Yep.
you look at Valorant right now, all of the pro players in North America are semi-pro Counter-Strike players, guys from
Yep.
MDL, guys who played at DreamHack Opens, guys who played
Hmm.
on the aspiring level. I've known them personally for years. So
Yeah.
I get frustrated because I'm like, I
Also,
have
like
this
all the
knowledge.
battalion crew crossed
Yeah.
over as well.
Yeah, you've got like Grego, BCJ,
Disillusioned
and Lex.
OWL people.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the thing is like Valorant to me is going to be like this great melting pot of like
Yes.
disillusioned people from other FPS games. Like you're going to have, like you said, the semi-pro Counter-Strike players who could never quite make it to like a stable professional level. People like, special situations like Braxton ACK who got banned basically from being able to play at the top level. So you're going to have all those Counter-Strike people flooding in that just couldn't. I don't want to like put it as harshly as just couldn't hack it anymore as a top pro, but it's partially true. Or they just got sick of being an MDL for like 20 seasons in a row. You're gonna have disillusioned like OWL people. You have people from Battle Royale games who are getting sick of that fad, which I think is starting to burn out a little bit. I think that's kind of starting to run its course. People are starting to get bored with the whole Battle Royale concept, so those people are coming over. Um, you know, Even people from like Halo and other games like that also are interested. So I think that it's going to be like kind of this big melting pot. But I think that it really does have like that Counter-Strike backbone as far as like the core of the game, the economy system, the gunplay, some of the map design, some of the ideas and theories about crossfires and map control and things of that nature. So yeah, I think it's like really poised for Counter-Strike people a lot, at least for now. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think everyone who is smart has their eye on. No doubt about it.
Yeah, well, we're basically at a stopping point here, dusT. I do appreciate you
Okay.
coming on the show with me and joining me on the broadcast. I wish you the best of luck as you continue your grind, chasing after that carrot, as you said. I can totally relate to that. I've been in that situation. I feel like I'm still in that situation. And
Yeah.
honestly, there's times when it feels like you'll always be in that situation. But every once in a while, when you start feeling like that, someone gives you a nibble. You're like, oh, yeah, that
Oh
carrot is
yeah.
really good. And you remind
Mm.
yourself, like, now I remember why I'm still doing this. Because I
Yep.
seriously, there have been so many times where I was like, you know what, I'm gonna hang up the mic and just be done. It's not working out. Or I tell myself at the start of a year, like, if this year doesn't go any better than last, I'm done. And then I get like 2 gigs. I'm like, I was just kidding. I swear I
Yep.
was just
Yep.
kidding. I'm
Oh, it's
totally
been
invested.
yeah, such a similar roller coaster ride for me as well, man. When it comes to that, that's the way she goes. That's for sure.
Well, I hope that you get the opportunities that I think you really deserve. I think you've definitely you've broken that chip off that was on your shoulder, and you've become much more comfortable on desks. You've become much more fluid as a caster as well. I think you and your pair. Why am I blanking? Vince. I was thinking his casting name. I was like, that's not what he goes by anymore. Metas, but Vince and you pair together so nicely as a casting duo. Because, like you said, he is a great play-by-play, and you obviously have tremendous amount of analytical knowledge, and you can fill that color role. And I think opportunities will come. And I think honestly, Valorant spooling up will be a good thing for anyone that was on the tier 2 level in Counter-Strike, because if people do jump ship and go from CSGO to Valorant, that leaves a void, and that void has to be filled by somebody. And luckily,
Yeah.
Counter-Strike has a system that's already developed for that void to be filled. It's not like other games where like the top talent leave and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do, because there wasn't necessarily a feeder system. There wasn't necessarily those other levels of events that were being casted by people who are very professional and polished. It's not like you don't know what you're doing. You're not some fresh-faced noob. Like, you are very comfortable on a desk. You understand how to be professional. So I think those opportunities are right around the corner.
Yeah, I hope so, man. And same to you, because I think you've definitely done a great job in the hosting role. Definitely some of the most fun I've had has been working dust alongside you as a host. So wishing you the best as well, man.
Yeah, hopefully we get to experience that on a desk sometime in the near future. Who knows what's going to happen with COVID, but I mean, you're seeing events being announced and they're just assuming that it's all going to be cleared up. So hopefully by the fall, we'll be back on LAN and everything will be hunky-dory and we'll be able to enjoy what we used to enjoy without any worries.
Hopefully so, man.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoy the show. If you do, go ahead and follow us on social media, twitter.com, facebook.com, instagram.com. It's all Nerd Street Gamers. You can also head to our website. It's nerdstgamers.com. It's the same for all our social media as well. You can follow dusT on Twitter. It's dusT Mouret, if I'm not mistaken.
dusT. Follow dusT.
Follow dusT. Oh, that's right. So it's follow dusT on social media. Do you have an Instagram as well, or?
Yep, that's also follow dusT.
Perfect. Makes it nice and easy. You can follow me as well if you want. Bach_TV on all appropriate social media. If you don't follow me, I won't be hurt. It's okay. Thank you guys for watching. We hope to see you next time. you.